If you've already bought one of these, I've got bad news for you, because this Megane E-Tech has had a massive update, thanks to 3 new things. It's cheaper, it's faster, and it gets a new piece of tech stolen from a home appliance. But before I tell you what they are, I want to show you the car's really clever design. And remember, now with that price being £500 cheaper than before, you'd think maybe they'd cut costs, but they definitely haven't. And one area that there is evidence for that is this front badge here, because unlike even a Mercedes S-Class, this Renault really neatly hides away all the technology that helps you drive it safely into this space. Keeps it really clean, and it means there's no fake grille here either. Plus, you get these really cool LED lights, which actually do a little dance when you unlock the car, and you get this nice section of day running light down there, which actually is right next to this opening at the front, which is one of the clever bits of this car. It helps you extend range because it slims the nose off aerodynamically. And the aero bits continue around the side. You've got these nicely designed 20-inch wheels here. These are the biggest wheels you can get. They're intricate, but they're also quite flat, so airflow is mostly clean over them. And then if you come around the sides here, you'll spot the door handles. Now, if the car was locked, in fact, I can do it for you now, they hide away neatly. So this is when you're driving, you have this nice ergonomic profile and aerodynamic profile as well. And you might think, oh, well, how am I supposed to open the door? Well, actually, because you've got keyless, when you walk up, it just pops out. But if it didn't, say, for example, in the middle of winter when it freezes over, unlike a Tesla Model 3, when it freezes over, you can't open it. In this car, what you can do is actually just slide your finger underneath, and then you get to the door handle like this. Now, because I've locked the car, it won't work. But if it was unlocked, I could do that. Very ergonomic. And then at the back here, this is another aerodynamic feature. Firstly, it looks good because you wouldn't have a door handle here to ruin the design, would you? You'd hide it away. And what Renault's done is they've tucked it up here. So you don't really notice it, but it's very easy to use. And you remember those cool lights I mentioned on the front? Well, the ones at the back are even cooler because check this out. When you press the lock button, it actually turns on the light beams, which show you how they've got this intricate design. I haven't seen something like that before, especially on a Renault. So it makes the tail actually look a lot more interesting, but otherwise it's a pretty simple affair. Although, weirdly, you get this button down here, and I haven't seen that on a car before. And well, when you press it, it lifts up the boot, but it doesn't actually open it properly because it's not a powered tailgate. So it's sort of quite cool until you realize you still need to put your fingers under there, and that's the spot that's gonna get very dirty in the winter months. So are your hands. Thankfully though, the boot is ginormous, easily big enough to swallow our couple's week away suitcase. This is a big suitcase here. And also Jamil's carry-on aeroplane bag. This is the biggest bag you can take on a plane, and it fits in easily. And we could even get another one of these, I reckon, on top here and still have room in there as well. Plus, you get extra storage under the floor, which means you can hide away your charge cable. That is something most other EVs don't have at the moment. Normally, you have to either fumble them into a bag and put them in the boot, or you'd use a front boot. This car doesn't have that, but it gets lots of space in there. I would give it top marks, but as I can demonstrate, when you remove everything, you'll notice that the boot floor is very low. So if you're a dog, for example, that's going to be pretty intimidating to jump into. And of course, if you're lifting heavy items out of here, well, you're going to have to lift them up before you can slide them out. So that's one minor negative. And the good things continue in the front seat, because this interior, when I think compared to an MG4 or a Volkswagen ID3, well, this feels like a step above. And not just because of the way it looks, although I do really like that. The design is more interesting. I like the fact that the screen is tilted towards me, and I love the Renault steering wheels, but also because the software in this car is the thing I mentioned earlier that is faster. Now, we're running Google software built into this technology, and so that means it's nice and familiar and it feels a lot like a smartphone. Plus you get Google Maps and Waze built in. You don't have to connect your phone, although you of course can do that as well. But it also means that you can customize it. It's got different kinds of apps. Plus, because this is Google, I can also talk to the car and ask it to do things, or even ask it for directions just verbally. So that's nice when you're on the move. I also like, though, that Renault hasn't been tempted to go the way of other manufacturers in ditching its climate control buttons. You've still got manual control, so it's much easier to use on the go, much quicker to make simple setting changes. And that actually reminds me of the other feature that this car has as a big upgrade, and that is a standard fit heat pump. Now, if you don't know what that is, that's the thing that's been pinched from some of your home appliances, including a dryer, and effectively it means it will heat up the car in the colder months much more efficiently. That not only means that your battery doesn't have to use up some of its range, but it also means this car's real world range, so all year round, whether it's hot or cold, will be much more consistent. So that will make it easier when planning your journeys. Elsewhere though in this cabin, I have to say there's a lot of space. This is true for a lot of EVs. You always get these big storage areas down here, but Renault's done a nice job of making sure it's easily accessible. Plus, you've also got room for cups down here. Now, this one over here is easily accessible. You can get even a big Stanley cup into there. But this one over here, well, while it is adjustable, it's not very tall. So if I were to find my water bottle, where have I put the water bottle? Ah, it's in the door. The door pockets are so deep that I lost my water bottle. Well, as you'll see, even though they easily get lost in there, something like this, which is just a normal size bottle, it doesn't fit in there. And obviously it's not going to fit even if you move it further back. So really you've only got one central cup holder. But as I demonstrated with the door pockets, there's plenty of room in there as well. Plus, you've got a little bit of storage room. So Renault's keys are a bit annoying in that they look quite nice, but they always slip out of my pockets when I'm driving. So there's a little key holder in there. And then if you lift up this very long armrest, well, then you've got a good amount of storage room down there. I'll demonstrate with my arm. There's a bit of room there. And I've also noticed, by the way, this is a central airbag, which is quite cool. Not seen that before. Then you've got a nice amount of space around you. The seats themselves aren't very bolstered, so they don't really pinch you at all, but they're very wide seats. So all body shapes should fit quite comfortably on this, and you can have them quite high or quite low. And if you're the sort of person who likes to have a wireless phone charger, you can keep your phone there as well. It's a nice amount of storage, and that's also true for the glove box as well. Generally, up front, the fit and finish, the space and the usability is good. Now, the back seats are where the Megane starts to feel like it might not have all advantages versus its rivals, and that is actually largely because of the floor. Now, in some of its rivals, including the ones from China, they've got some very thin battery technology, and it doesn't feel like Renault's battery is anywhere near as thin. So despite this car feeling like a taller one, my feet are actually a little bit higher, and that means if the seat ahead is set too low for you to tuck your toes under, well, you can't. And so, as you'll see, my legs are quite crushed up. Although I have to admit, if you raise the seat up a little bit more, if the passenger ahead sits a bit higher, you can then tuck your feet under. But versus the MG4 and the ID3, which just have ample amounts of space, this is definitely a little bit smaller. Although I've got plenty of room above my head, there's no issues there whatsoever, and the seats themselves are nice and comfortable. They're certainly comfortable enough for 2 adults to sit back here, although the middle seat is a little bit narrow maybe for 3 adults, but for 3 kids it should be fine. You don't get a middle seat armrest because, well, all the armrest tokens in this car were taken up by the front one, but you do get a pair of USB-C ports and a pair of vents here. So this is more of a comfortable 4-seater. Although I have to admit, if you did have 3 people in the back here, the view for the driver out the back is going to be seriously impeded because that rear glass is super narrow. 3 heads here means you're going to be blind up there. That is until you realise that this Megane comes with a lot of reversing technology, and I mean in the camera sense. Now, firstly, we've got, when I put this car into reverse, a very high resolution camera, and I can also have a 360 view as well, so I can see obstacles around me, even if they're out of sight, and it's all sharp and very clear. But what if you've got those annoying passengers in the back, keeping your view from the rear window blocked? Well, doesn't matter in this particular car, because I just flick the mirror into digital mode and it uses a camera on the back of the car to give me an effective mirror. But it means it doesn't matter if there's anyone behind me because this is looking directly out the back, and the camera view is really sharp and therefore very helpful. What about when you're driving forwards on the road? Well, this Megane is actually quite a nippy electric car. It's actually a little bit quicker off the mark than its main rivals, and it feels really nice and elastic. You put your foot down and it's nice and effortless. But of course, if you drive it much more efficiently, well, its claimed range is right up there with the best of them in its class. But we won't have time to test that claim range today, but we will be getting a Megane in soon, so make sure you're subscribed before that video comes out. And of course, when you're searching for a car, if you want to find yourself a great deal, make sure you've downloaded the Cinch app or visit our website, because we've got plenty of great cars on there from all different brackets. Yeah, that works. Now, this Megane, when you get behind the wheel, you have to notice straight away that the refinement is really good. I mentioned that the interior feels nice, and actually the road noise and even the wind noise over these chunky door mirrors so far seems to be quite well controlled. So you feel like they've done a good job with insulating inside here. It's also quite soft and light touch at the controls. It feels like a comfortable car first and foremost. So the weighting on the steering is light, the brake pedal is pretty light, although I have to admit, not much happens when you first touch the brake pedal. It's only a bit later on that you feel like the brakes actually engage. They're strong enough, but they are a little bit unresponsive initially, although there is a fix for that, and I'll tell you about that in just a second. But just in terms of comfort and ease of use, use? Well, if I drive over these cat's eyes, the car does a great job of smoothing them out. So this is going to be a nice, easy car to do long distances in. But it does have one key piece of technology that I think even goes beyond its rivals, one of which, the MG4, is very good in this regard. But I think this car goes a step above, and that is in its regenerative technology, because Renault has a mode in this car, or several modes actually, which can be controlled by the paddles behind your steering wheel. And so that means if I want to one pedal drive, I can turn up the regenerative technology's resistance to the maximum level, to the extent that now I'm not touching the brakes, but I'm actually losing speed quite quickly. This is quite heavy braking, or the feeling of it, when in actual fact what was happening was the electric powertrain, the battery, was just taking energy back into the battery. So that helps you slow down. It means you've got less to do when driving, and it will make traffic much easier to manage. But then if you don't like that, well, you can just, at the click of this shift paddle here, or this paddle on the back of the wheel, turn it basically off and make the car roll along like a traditional automatic. That's something that its rivals don't do, nowhere near as well as this. I mentioned the car felt quite quick off the mark, but does it handle nicely? Well, it's definitely a little bit roly-poly, and I think the MG4 is a slightly sportier driving car. But because this car's a little bit taller, and because it's more comfortable just in the way it feels, the vibe it gives, I don't think that's really a problem. I think if you just want to have a car to do as many miles in as quickly and as easy as possible, well, this definitely does that. And of course, if you want the car to help you drive, well, you get all the usuals like adaptive cruise control, which is helped actually by that big Renault badge on the nose where you've got all the technology housed, and you've also got all your standard safety systems on this car, some of which can be quite annoying, like all new cars are at the moment, because the car will bong or bing at you, especially if you come up to the speed limit or if you tread onto a white line. But thankfully, because this is a Renault, there is a button, and just with a couple of taps of it, you can turn all of those systems off, or at least you can switch them to your preferences. So for someone like me who hates them, tapping that will switch it all off, and you only have to do it once when you get in the car. So there we have it. I've explained why you'll want to take this version of the Megane over its pre-update version, and that is because, well, for less money, you get faster software and you also get better year-round range thanks to that heat pump. I mean, versus a Volkswagen ID.3, this looks like even better value for money. But if it's still not enough for you, well, there is a model from MG which packs even more punch, but for not much more cash. And I explain why here.